Polls have opened in the UK, where the election called by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is expected to vote his Conservative Party out of office after 14 years. Mr. Sunak cast his vote early in the village of Northallerton in North Yorkshire. Opinion polls have suggested Mr. Sunak will be the last of the 5 Tory Prime Ministers in the past 8 years. Labour leader Keir Starmer cast his vote in London. Analysts expect the opposition to win the ballot, which could make Mr. Starmer the first Labour leader to get to Downing Street since 2005. Now, if he secures the victory, Keir Starmer will go into office with the largest party in Parliament and a host of pressing issues that have been driving public discontent.
Firstly, NHS. My daughter works in teaching, so more funding for schools. The cost of living crisis has got to be sorted because people are struggling so much. Lots of things need sorting, and I think he's the man to do it. We can't go on with this Tory chaos we've had. It's been too much for too long.
Voting began at 7 a.m. in more than 40,000 polling stations across the country. Broadcasters will be allowed to announce exit polls at 10 p.m. Now, for more, our correspondent Olly Barratt is live outside a polling station in West London. Olly, a crucial election taking place today. What are the issues top of voters' minds as they cast their ballot?
There have been some central themes in this election campaign because the parties know what is on the minds of the voters, from immigration to the state of the National Health Service to the economy, the cost of living crisis that we have seen in recent years. There have also been international geopolitical themes at play as well, perhaps less on the minds of domestic voters as they go to the polls, but nonetheless they've been front and centre at times in the election campaign. But there's a sense, I think, among voters in the UK that particularly public services just aren't quite working the way that they would like them to work at the moment, and that seems to be feeding into voter sentiment for these polls. Now, the Conservatives would say that a lot of that is to do with crises that we've seen in recent years that they're not to blame for. An economic crisis and an inflation crisis linked to the conflict in Ukraine, economic difficulties linked to the COVID pandemic and so many people not being able to go properly to work for so long. The Labour Party say that many of the difficulties the UK has been facing recently are specifically, the finger of blame can specifically be pointed at the Conservative Party. That's how that argument's been playing out on the election campaign, and that feeds into, I think, the polling that you were referencing that does suggest that the public are minded to hand things over to the Labour Party at this point and see if they can improve things.
So all eyes have been on the two major parties, Olly, Conservatives and Labour. But what about the other parties? What role would they play in Parliament?
That's right. There are a number of other parties hoping to return members of Parliament to Westminster and therefore play a role in Parliament. The traditional third party in the UK for some time had been the Liberal Democrats, but they had a couple of very difficult elections the last 2 times around. They hope that their support is growing in places like the southwest and the southeast of England, taking support away from the Conservatives, and they hope that actually when the numbers are done, they might have nearly as many MPs as the Conservatives and therefore could be an effective second opposition, if you like. We've also been seeing the Reform UK party led by Nigel Farage, the right-wing party that is very much campaigning against illegal immigration. They've been doing pretty well in the polling in terms of vote share, but might not actually return many MPs to Parliament given the first-past-the-post system we have here in the UK. The Green Party also polling fairly well in terms of national vote share, but may not return many MPs, if any. And so it's often difficult for the smaller parties. But going back to the Liberal Democrats, they really do hope that they can boost their power in Parliament. But if the polls are right and the Labour Party has a significant majority, it will be difficult over the years ahead for all of the opposition parties.
Anticipation as we await the results. Olly, thank you for that. Olly Barratt there, live in London.